Greetings my friends, I'm Paper Ninja, and I'm glad you're tuning in today. This video is going to be a little different to my translations, a demonstration, or how some skills work. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the main characters for Fantasy Maiden Wars, Reimu Hakurei. There's tons of other videos and official content talking about Reimu, but just to sum her up, Reimu is known as the Shrine Maiden of Paradise and is typically one of two primary protagonists within Touhou. Her powers, as seems to be in line with most Touhou characters, could be considered overpowered, involving the power to float. Her occupation is to primarily keep the balance within Gensou, though that typically means involving Danmaku. Within the games, Reimu typically varies in power on the competitive levels, ranging from being bad, average, to even top tier in some cases. So how does she fare in Fantasy Maiden Wars Complete Box, which is the fan game? I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of Reimu's introduction in this game, where she joins, her skill set, and her overall strength. In the end, I'll be giving her a separate letter ranking, with F being the lowest and S being the highest for 3 different categories. These categories will be availability, skill set, and overall strength. Then, I'll average her out and give her a final rating. The reason I've chosen these 3 is because each character is generally viable to use, but some characters will always be easier to use than other characters. I've chosen availability as a category due to joining times and how long you can actually use a character. Availability is really important because 1, a character who joins early means they have more time to become strong. A character who joins early will always have more opportunity to gain resources, primarily PP, to spend on important skills or stat boosts to improve their performance. A late joiner means they simply don't have the resources upon joining to be strong as invested characters already, though there are some exceptions. 2, more time to use your powerful character. You'll get more out of using them if a character is around longer for 50 chapters than a character who joins in the last 5 chapters of the game. It doesn't matter if you spend everything on the character that joins in the last chapter if you couldn't even use them for the previous 90% of the game. 3. Additionally, resources within this game are limited for combat units. A combat unit always has to compete with another for experience and pilot points, or PP. This does not mean a character is unusable. This simply means that a character will be harder to manage, use, or generally reach maximum potential to their competitors. With over 50 characters able to be used, it's not unexpected to have difficulty cycling through everybody, while still managing to keep a character relevant and strong enough to handle the game's challenges and expectations. If you're attempting to play optimally, it is almost always better to focus your resources into a couple characters, rather than spread your resources too thin trying to make everyone decent. Secondly, I've chosen skill set as a category. This will include a character's spirit list, personal skills, and generic skills that a character might already come with. Unfortunately, some spirit lists on some characters are just far superior on them in comparison to others. A good spirit list can really make using a character easier, improving damage potentials, or provide excellent utility. The same goes for personal skills. Generic skills a character comes with also means potentially not having to buy other skills to replace it should a skill be bad, or a temporary placeholder until you can get a better skill. Lastly will be overall strength. This will be separated into 3 different categories: attack capability, defensive capability, and support capability. Attack capability is rated as whether a character has significantly stronger attacks or upgrades to help throughout the game. Defensive capability is rated on whether a character has good defensive options to help survive. Supportive capability is whether a character can provide any utility or support for another character, such as increasing someone's power, healing, or resupplying a character. Now, with all of these criteria in mind, let's get started. Starting with Reimu's availability, it goes without saying that since Reimu is one of the 2 main characters that you can choose to start with in the beginning of the game, her availability is absolutely insane. Going through more thoroughly per game, let's take a look here. In Reimu's route, she joins as early as chapter 1 out of 77 chapters in the entire game, along with 2 interludes. Of those 77, she is available in a grand total of 73 of them, making her the highest available unit in the entire game on her own route. Within interludes, she is missing from 1 out of 2. On the Marisa route, her availability is a lot more limited since she will not be in Marisa's unique routes. Overall, Reimu will be available in 59 chapters out of 77, and missing from 1 interlude in the entire game. This is generally due to Marisa's route splitting from Reimu, though this availability can still be considered very high. Other than Marisa, Reimu will not be as available as Alice and probably Nitori. Overall, as a primary protagonist, it goes without saying that Reimu is one of the most available characters in the entire game. Even on Marisa's route, she's there for over 50% in the entire game. I'll be giving two separate rankings for availability since we have two routes. For Reimu's route, Reimu gets an S rank, given that she's there for over 90% in the entire game. For Marisa's route, Reimu gets an A rank. She's not in over 75% of Marisa's routes, and there are maps where there's plenty of enemies for Reimu to benefit from, but Reimu's in enough maps to be reliable, even as a secondary protagonist to Marisa. Next up, let's look at Reimu's skill set. Once again, a skill set means a character's spirit list, generic skills, and personal skills that a character comes with. These are important as these can really enhance or downsize a character's strength. Plus, more work for little benefit means a character is typically harder to justify in comparison to other investment type characters. Starting with Reimu's spirits, here's a full list of Reimu's spirits. All characters typically end up with 6 spirits. Most can be obtained by leveling, while some might be locked until you reach a certain part of the story. Starting with Reimu's first 2 spirits, she gets Intuition. Intuition grants Reimu 100% accuracy until the next player phase, on top of ensuring that she automatically dodges the next attack. Focus increases her evasion and accuracy rate by 30% until the next player phase. Both of these help Reimu's combat immensely, as she can tilt the combat forecast in her favor. Luck doubles the points you earn should you successfully kill an enemy. If you fail, the luck is wasted, so keep that in mind. Fury or Direct Hit ensures that your next attack will ignore damage reduction from all sources except from power. This includes all generic skills like Guard, Shield Defense, and Support Defense. This doesn't work if an enemy uses a spirit though, so be warned. Zeal is a powerful skill that allows Reimu to move again after conducting a turn. Reimu must be the front unit for this to work. You can keep using this as long as you have the SP to do so. The skill is story locked, but you wouldn't even have the SP to use it until then anyway. Finally, Soul increases Reimu's next attack's damage by 1.8x. This doesn't allow Reimu to land any critical hits, and only works for one attack though. Nonetheless, it remains a powerful skill that allows for high burst damage. Overall, Reimu's spirit list is incredibly versatile, allowing her to remain consistent in terms of accuracy and evasion. She will completely dominate the early to mid game, due to not needing any significant damage multipliers until then. However, Reimu will fall off for a bit due to inflating HP values in the mid game, before gaining Soul at level 65 in the late game. Regardless, she remains easily one of the best dodge tanks in the entire game. Now we come to Reimu's generic skills and personal skills. We'll start with the generic skills before moving on to personal skills. Reimu starts with 3 generic skills in particular that all lend to her great survivability, accuracy, and evasion. The first is her generic skill, Miko or Shrine Maiden. This grants Reimu plus 5% to her accuracy and evasion, and cannot be removed from her at all. Only 2 other characters have this skill. While this might seem weak, this skill eventually increases in level as Reimu herself levels up, going up to level 9 and 45% accuracy and evasion. Shrine Maiden levels up at level 8, 17, 23, 31, 39, 48, 57, and 65 respectively. The second skill Reimu comes with is Instinct level 6. This increases her evasion and accuracy rates when she becomes lower in health. Once Reimu gets low, it's not surprising for enemies that have 0% hit rates against Reimu. Here, you can see the difference when Reimu is at full health and when Reimu is at around 60% of her health. Lastly is Grazing level 1. This makes it so that Reimu only takes half damage from grazing attacks. This is also a good, strong skill early on to help ensure that due to Reimu's low health, she isn't killed by graze damage. It is not a bad idea to remove this later on, once you have the resources to buy something else. Nonetheless, it remains a strong tool early on to help Reimu. That's all the generic skills that Reimu starts with. Now, let's see the personal skills, since Reimu has quite a few of them. In terms of personal skills, Reimu has some relatively weak ones, but she also has some good ones. Here's a full list of Reimu's personal skills. Starting with Yokai Buster. Yokai Buster increases damage to Yokai type enemies by 10% at default, then increases by an additional 5% for every level it gets, peaking at 20%. This is a very strong skill, and is often the go-to for Reimu if you don't have any specific strategies in mind. Leaving this on Reimu is often not a problem if you happen to be forgetful or lazy. Next is Duplex Border and Duplex Border Plus, which reduces your damage taken by 500 whenever you're grazing or hit. This always costs us 10 MP, and you can't choose not to use this whenever you're grazing, so it will automatically activate every single time. This is a bit tough to manage early on, since you have no way to manage MP in the early game. It's great at completely shutting out graze damage even further, but the MP cost really hurts. It's best to avoid this skill until you get the upgraded version, Duplex Border Plus. This increases the damage reduction up to 1000, so if you find you need some more defenses, this can really help eke that out. Though, there are also other options, such as support defenders. Then, we have Perception, which increases your critical rate by 20%, while lowering your accuracy by 10%. This is not a bad skill at all, since Reimu can easily shore up the accuracy loss with the Focus Spirit, completely negating the downside. However, on hard mode, the accuracy loss is a lot more noticeable, so keep that in mind. This is especially noteworthy for dodge-type bosses, who typically need accuracy modifiers to hit consistently. This stacks with other generic skills like Belief, which directly increases your critical rate chance. Criticals in this game increase damage by another 1.2x or 20%, though it can be more RNG if you're not consistently critting. Mysterious Shrine Maiden gives Reimu S rank in the air. This basically increases Reimu's accuracy and evasion rate by an additional 10%, while also reducing damage by 10%. This is pretty good on non-boss stages, where there's no yokai type enemies. There's ways to get Reimu's terrain to S rank, though those either use the full upgrade bonus or need item slot, so this is a decent contender for Reimu's personal skill. Last is Spellcard Declaration, a very versatile skill that can really net you a lot of strong setups. Fantasy Nature is a special command that is unlocked after completing chapter 49, and is unique to Reimu alone. Once again, Zio gives Reimu another turn for 70 SP, but you can use this personal skill instead. Your SP used for Zio can be used for Soul instead, which can push Reimu's damage high with the proper setup. If you plan to burst something instantly, like an enemy boss, using this is a solid idea. Overall, Reimu has some strong contenders on which skill you want to use. You really can't go wrong with most of them, since they're all significantly beneficial in some way. Out of 77 chapters, 62 of them have yokai for Reimu's route, so over 75% of the stages have yokai. It's really hard to argue against Yokai Buster in the final game, which has 22 chapters for example, where even though Spellcard Decoration is super strong, every single chapter has a yokai enemy where Reimu can use Yokai Buster. Again, it really depends on what strategies you prefer, either going for more consistent performances and damage, in which you might opt for Mysterious Shrine Maiden, Yokai Buster, or Perception. If you like more burst, you'd probably go for Spellcard Decoration. Once again, none of them are bad, so just adapt their personal skills on a map-to-map basis. Summarizing everything, most of Reimu's skill list synergizes well with each other, with a heavy focus on evasion and accuracy. Her damage will never be as high as other characters, but you can expect consistent performance throughout the entire game. Lastly, Reimu remains one of the best dodge tanks against enemies, with the exception of major bosses who have ridiculously high accuracy boosts. Given all of these factors, I'm going to have to give Reimu a firm S rank for her combined skill set. It synergizes incredibly with each other, and will serve you well throughout even the toughest difficulties. Next up is Reimu's overall strength and what she excels in. Once again, this will be separated into 3 different categories. Being very bad in one category does not mean your character is bad, so long as the other categories are at least decent to good. It's a different problem if you're bad at all 3, however. Let's reiterate them, starting with attack capability. Again, attack capability is rated as whether a character has significantly stronger attacks or upgrades that help throughout the game. This time though, this means analyzing all of Reimu's offensive capabilities, including her previous spirits and skills which we discussed earlier. Defensive capability is rated on whether a character has good defensive options to help survive. Again, this means analyzing all of Reimu's skills and spirits from earlier in order to see how she holds up against enemy attacks. This will also look into Reimu's general stat gains as she levels, as well as her mobility, armor, and HP increases, which are all relevant to her survival. Lastly, supportive capability is whether a character can provide any utility or support for another character, such as increasing someone's power, healing, or resupplying a character. To further facilitate this, we need to look at Reimu's growth rates as well, so I'll bring this up later. For now, let's get into her attack capabilities. First, let's go over the legend. An attack with the peace symbol means it is post-movement, meaning it can be used after moving. An attack with the S symbol means it is a solid type, meaning that it can be parried by enemies if they have the blocking generic skill. An attack with map means that the attack can affect multiple enemies and possibly friends at once. An attack with combo means that it needs another character within one square tile of the user in order to use the attack. If you need to pause the video to look at the attacks further, or to look back at the legend, please feel free to. A side note as well, Reimu actually has 4 separate attack lists overall, but I've condensed them down to 2 for simplicity's sake. Additionally, Reimu's complete attack list is actually massive, so I've had to break it down to 2 different sections per attack list. With that in mind, let's look at Reimu's 2 attack list. For Reimu's first form in attack list, I'll be showing her first 4 attacks. Going from left to right, most of Reimu's ranges are fairly respectable, with the highest being 6. Her base weapon power is about as expected for the early game, but the main advantage of Reimu's attack list is that it has a high ammo count. Being ammo oriented, especially someone like Reimu who has a high ammo count, means that she can last an entire chapter without running out of resources to fight. They hit pretty hard at the time she's available, and she has a couple post-movement attacks, giving her excellent versatility. Moving on to the bottom half of her attack list, thanks to Reimu's high ammo count, she can instead focus all of her MP on her finisher, Fantasy Seal. This allows Reimu to sustain herself for a long time without needing any kind of outside support in terms of resources. It's actually unlikely that you run out of ammo on Reimu's attacks, unless you kill every single enemy and the boss with Reimu. There's 2 more things to note in this particular attack list, and that's Reimu's map attack, as well as her combination with Marisa. Reimu's map attack is a secret, and can only be unlocked by killing 100 enemies with Reimu before the start of Chapter 56. If you do, Reimu will gain this attack in her base form in this current attack list. The combination with Marisa is locked until a certain part of the story, but it being ammo based is super helpful since it won't infringe on Reimu's MP for Fantasy Seal. It's incredibly strong for when it arrives, but also awkward since Marisa tends to want a little distance from enemies to attack comfortably, and the attack is only 1 range. Additionally, Marisa has to be next to Reimu in a 1 tile square around Reimu for this to be used, and both need 135 power. For what it's worth though, it's pretty strong if you can get past the clunkiness of it. Moving on to the next attack list, which is even bigger than this first one, is Reimu's upgraded attack list. Again, due to its length, I've had to split it up to make it fit, so please bear with me. You unlock this set after Chapter 39 for Reimu route, and Chapter 40 on Marisa's route. Much of what I said in the first attack list applies to this one, and Reimu's attacks all have different names now as a result of being upgraded, but are still functionally the same. Some of the ammo in her attacks actually got increased as well. Her weapon damage gets universally buffed, which is much needed at the time you get this. At this point, you're even more unlikely to run out of ammo, and again, much of the things I said prior in her first attack list applies here. Good damage, though it's noticeably going to start paling in comparison to some more heavily offensive characters now. Let's talk about her bottom half though, which is where a lot of her new stuff is. She keeps her combination with Marisa, but now has 2 more. Shrine Maiden Extension, a combo move Sane, isn't a terrible move, but it's pretty MP heavy. Combining the costs, it's 80 MP total, 40 MP from both characters, for less damage than Fantasy Seal Blink at base. It's got okay range, but the limitations of combinations still kicks in. Speaking of, Fantasy Seal Blink is one of Reimu's new finishers, replacing Fantasy Seal, and boy is it good. Ignore size, plus 50% accuracy, 1-3 post movement range. It's MP intensive, but thankfully again, because the majority of Reimu's attacks rely on ammo, Reimu can allocate all of her MP for this. Now we come to Reimu's last 2 attacks that she gets. After Chapter 49, you get Fantasy Nature, and man oh man is it expensive. Sitting at 85 MP, and 400 more base damage, you get Reimu's second finisher. To use it, Reimu gets a new command at 150 power called Fantasy Nature, which triggers a new passive for Reimu, as well as unlocking this attack. The attack is solid, but not being post-movement stings a bit. It luckily makes up for it with its massive increase in range, and now pierces barriers, in addition to ignoring size. You can only really get 2 or 3 uses of this before running out of MP, even at maximum MP upgrades without any help. Lastly is Reimu's new combination move with Marisa, which you get at quite literally the last chapter of the game. With a slick new animation and a fat 1000 more weapon damage over fantasy nature, is it worth it? Absolutely. While a bit finicky to use, it ignores barriers and size differences again, and it remains one of the most powerful attacks in the game. I believe at base without any upgrades even, besides maybe Akyu, this is the strongest attack in the game. Unlike the first combination attack, Marisa now performs much better at 1-2 range by the time you get this, which was previously a huge obstacle. It's only got 1 ammo, but you can almost guarantee that whatever you hit with this is either going to die or take out most of its HP, especially if you use Reimu's soul for the 1.8 times multiplier with it. Summing up, Reimu has several moves that use ammo, allowing her longevity throughout a chapter without needing continuous resources. At maximum MP, you can likely get 3, maybe even 4 finishers off against a boss, before needing to refill if you built it correctly. In the early game, high ammo attacks are great, since there are several maps that do not allow you to restore MP at all in high quantities. Once again, her strongest downside is that her damage begins to fall during the third game, giving way to more powerful characters or story upgraded characters, as the game is generally known as a huge farm game due to giving you a suzerain item at the beginning of it. While she's still quite powerful, she won't be as dominant as she was in the previous 2 games, even with her story upgrade. She has no access to inherent damage multipliers and must rely on generic skills like belief in shotgunning and a personal skill for damage boosters. Once she gets soul at level 65 though, or you stat booster her a bit, she's pretty much got no further issues. Given all of this, I think it's best to give her an A rank in terms of attack capability. Her early to mid game is incredibly potent, and she makes the first half of the game extremely manageable. As she enters the late game, really strong units start entering that outpace her, but Reimu will never be bad. If she had a bit more strength after her upgrade, she'd be S rank for sure, but the third game is infamously pretty difficult towards the latter half, and having Reimu be a bit weaker stings a bit. Regardless, Reimu is almost never a waste of a spot on your team. Now, let's move on to defensive capabilities. The reason I didn't bring up the growth types earlier in offense is because regardless of character, your generally main attacking stat, melee or range, is going to have a 0.9 growth per level with the exception of 2 growth types, evasion and sub. The defense and evasion stats are different though for stat growths, which is why the growth types are being brought up here instead. Looking at the stat growth sheet, Reimu uses the range/balance stat growth type, which gives her 1.8 evasion per level instead of 1.9. So surprisingly, she doesn't actually have the best evasion growth. Moving on to parameter upgrades, Reimu's HP and armor gains are lackluster, as to be expected of someone focused on evasion, getting 150 HP and 40 armor per upgrade, rather than the standard 200 HP and 50 armor. With a base of 800 armor and 3400 HP, Reimu's not going to be able to take more than 2 hits before going down. Regardless of her poor parameter upgrades from points though, she gets the average +5 to her mobility per level with diminishing returns. Her starting Shrine Maiden generic skill and instinct boost Reimu's evasion, as we talked about earlier. Adding on, her 2 spirits, focus and intuition, helps make Reimu's evasion much more consistent. Reimu is without question one of the best dodge tanks in the game. In the mid and even late game, it's really not unexpected to see something like this. Now, summing up everything, Reimu dying shouldn't be common unless you get several unlucky rolls from RNG in a row. Moreover, Reimu is easy to build with generic skills, since most things work well with her, like Predict, which gives her +20 to accuracy and evasion stats at 120 power. All of this just boosts her evasion even more. On hard mode, this is more than enough for her to consistently dodge attacks, with the exception of bosses. Damage in this game, even with tanky units, scales very quickly against you, so being able to reliably dodge attacks is just so beneficial. Later on in the game, bosses will 1 to 2 shot Reimu if you're careless, but up until that point, Reimu will be almost unstoppable. Honestly, it's hard to give her anything less than an S rank in terms of defense capabilities. You probably have to actively try to get Reimu killed by being careless or forgetful. Finally, we have supportive capability. As for supportive capability, this is fairly easy, so I'll go right to the overall section. Reimu has pretty much zero utility, She's not durable enough to defend others, she can't heal, resupply, provide buffs, and the list goes on about any utility she can't provide. Reimu is purely a combat unit. By that standard, I have no choice but to give her an F rank in utility. You can maybe make the argument that by killing enemies, that is Reimu's utility, but for the sake of other characters, we won't go that route. After almost half an hour of analyzing, we finally come to the conclusion. There were a ton of stuff that I had to cut that I would have liked to keep or add in, but then this video would have been even longer. Let's have a look at the final ratings that we've given Reimu for each category. The only real low letter grading that we gave was supportive capability. Now, the reason I wanted to rate a character for their support utility, even though Reimu has basically none, is because support capability is still extremely important. If a character is not capable of attacking or defending very well, then they generally excel at some kind of utility, which can really make or break a character. Support type characters are just as important as combat characters, and when used in the right hands, are integral for powerful strategies. Additionally, just because a character rates poorly in one category, does not mean that they're a bad character overall. It simply means that they may not be as proficient at it as other characters, or at all in some cases. As for Reimu's final rating, factoring in that Reimu is a purely offensive unit, I'll be giving her an S rank. Keep in mind that this is for a new game only, and not for New Game Plus. Reimu has her own route, and is generally considered one of the best newbie-friendly characters to play. She has incredible accuracy and evasion, even in the face of the hardest difficulties of the game. Not only that, but the game forces the player to use her multiple times, so the player is incentivized to use her whenever possible. Her damage will never be as powerful as other characters, but that is generally an acceptable trait anyway, in return for an incredible survivability and high accuracy rates that several other characters suffer from. Although, I should have mentioned this in the very beginning of the video, that this discussion focuses primarily on up to hard mode, though Reimu continues being very strong at Lunatic anyway. The reason for this is because Lunatic requires you to be incredibly knowledgeable about the game, plan who you're already going to be using, and is so heavily favored against the player that it is generally not fun for players, unless you like it. As seems to be canon, Reimu is someone who requires very little work to be strong. Heals pretty much gravitate towards her because she's such an active frontline unit. Much like her canon counterpart, Reimu already begins strong. Use the Shrine Maiden in Paradise actively, and you'll hardly be disappointed with her performance at all. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.